Hi. So, as I promised, um, and because my agent said, you've got a story to tell, so tell your story, because it can help other people. This is what I'm doing. So, I'm going to go through my memoir, Colours of a Rare Bird, chapter by chapter, um, and then I'm going to break it down so you'll have more of an idea what the book's about and how it can maybe help you. So, there it is. Colours of a Rare Bird. Um, it's not a very big book. It's about 105 pages. Um, so the first chapter is about how I was in the closet for so long, for 35 years, and while I was in the closet, in the 90s, the world was changing, but I was not. You know, um, people were sort of coming out, and there was more men kissing on the soaps on sort of Coronation Street and EastEnders and Emmerdale Farm. Um, and it was more talked about and it was more visible. Um, the only thing I had in the 90s was a show called Queer as Folk, um, which I had to watch in quiet um, while my dad stepped upstairs. I had to put my ear to the TV. Um, I think that was in 1998. And it was a brilliant show by Russell T Davies. And yeah, that was the only thing I had then. And then it started coming to my living room. I was with my grandparents growing up, and they loved their soaps. And you know, there's more and more men kissing on the television, and they started showing gay gay venues and gay bars. Um, Again on Coronation Street and EastEnders and um, Emmerdale Farm. And there were some good storylines, about visibility and coming out of the closet. So the world was changing, and I wasn't changing with it. I was still in the closet, and it was hurting. I was hurting because seeing all this on the TV, um, I knew that I should have been going to gay venues and meeting other gay men, and I should have been exploring, my sexuality and bonding with people and getting to know other gay men, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So the chapter one describes why I couldn't. I was petrified, and I had internal homophobia as well. So I just couldn't go to a gay venue, um, or a gay pub or anything like that. I just couldn't. So then I go on to my childhood, which wasn't the best really. There was no communication between me and my parents, and my parents divorced when I was 10, and my father sort of didn't communicate much with us, and my mother was, she had two jobs and trying to keep a roof over her head, and she was dating, and there was just no time. I was one of four as well, and there was just no time for me really. It was neglect on their part, but there was just no time. Um, and I suffered for sort of being neglected and not had the communication breaking down between me and my parents. Um, So I had no one to talk to really, not even my parents. There was no bond there really. And then me and my mother just didn't sort of get on for years. We just didn't see eye to eye, and um, I didn't get on with my stepdads, and there was a lot of noise in our house with four, 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 three siblings, and there was four of us, and my mother, struggling with money and um, struggling with her relationships and keeping down two jobs. There was just no time, and communication totally broke down. So yeah, it was traumatic. It was a traumatic childhood. And then when I was 16, enough was enough. I wasn't getting along with my mother's partner, and I was controlling, and I sort of took on the man of the house, and I just wasn't well. I was having panic attacks, and I wasn't looking after myself, and I wasn't, my hygiene was going downhill, and I just took no interest in myself. And whoops, sorry about that. And yeah, it was just traumatic. And I then go and live with my dad when I was 16, and things kind of got worse because I just there's no communication between me and my dad. I think my dad always knew that I was gay, but he just, this was the 90s again. He didn't want to face it. He didn't want to have a gay son, and he didn't want it brought up. He didn't want it mentioned. He did say to me once that if I was gay, that not to bring it over the front door, but to keep it away, to do it in secret, but never to bring it over the front door, because he just couldn't cope with having a gay son. And again, this was the 90s, so this is all chapter one, and that's when I, because of my grandparents who were homophobic, because of my dad who was homophobic, I thought the best thing I can do is go into the closet, and that's where I was safe. And I put in chapter one all the hurt that I went through, repressing my body, holding my body back from a natural progression, and just struggling, with my mental health, but I'm to keep all this to myself, and isolated, and living in fear, and my body was hurting, and my mind was hurting, and really going into the closet was the worst thing I could have done. There's just so much pain on the human body because it wants to go with its natural progression, and you're holding it back. You're punishing yourself. It's self-punishment. But I thought that being in the closet was safe, and I then said, I'm not gay. I'm interested in girls, and I was in denial. But there was just so much hurt that nobody could see, only me. Again, my mother knew I was gay, and my sister knew I was gay, but I couldn't admit that to anybody, even though they knew. So yeah, all that's in chapter one. Why I went to the closet, and the hurt and the pain, and how I just wasn't well, and I was on benefits, and I was roaming the streets, but I was just in denial. It was just pure denial, and it was just so much pain. The world was changing, and pop stars were coming out as gay, and Stephen Gately came out as gay, and um, times were changing, and I was just in so much pain, especially when celebrities would come out as gay, and they were saying, if I can do it, you can do it, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. So yeah, that's in chapter one. So I'll leave it there for now, and tomorrow I'll discuss chapter two, which is about my adolescence, my teenage years, and how things were getting worse for me, and how my body was even more in pain, um, and how I even, how I even fancied girls. I don't know where that came from, but I did. And when they were having boyfriends, even that hurt because I just felt like nobody wanted me, and I felt like I was on my own. And when in reality, there were hundreds, thousands out there like me. So yeah, I leave it there for now anyway. And if you want to, again, my website is andrewbrookman.co.uk, and this book is on there, and you can get this on Amazon, um, uh, or even Waterstones in mine is in Cardiff, but if you can go to Waterstones, it should be on the shelf, or you should be able to order it. But I would recommend Waterstones to buy this book. Because I pretty much filled this with the closet homosexual, and things you can do while you're in the closet, to help yourself. So it's a book about the closet, um, and then how I came out of the closet, but 35 years later. But yeah, thanks, guys, and you're going to be okay. Really, you're going to be okay.